Dear students, good morning. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 21st April 2018. The first article is about impeachment of Judge of a Supreme Court. It is about the proposed removal of Chief Justice of India Deepak Mishra from his office. Remember here, impeachment and removal are two different words. Impeachment is stated as a word only under Article 61, and all the places the word which is stated is removal. So under Article 124 subclause 4, what we have is the removal of a judge. Removal is done by the President of India, but impeachment is done by the Parliament. So impeachment is used only in the context of President of India. Here, let's understand the process of removal of a judge. First, members of Parliament has to propose a motion to be introduced, and this motion has to be admitted by the chairman in Rajya Sabha, speaker in the case of Lok Sabha. After that, a three-member committee has to be constituted by that particular chair, which consists of Judge of a Supreme Court and then Chief Justice of High Court and an eminent jurist. And these people have to investigate on the charges which are framed against the judge. And after investigation, if they find fault of misbehavior with the judge, then they can recommend for his removal. And if they do not find any fault with the judge, the matter dies then and there itself. And once removal process is started and three-member committee admits that there is misbehavior, then it is kept for voting in each house, and it has to be passed by the special majority. That is 2/3 majority of the members present and voting, and majority out of the total strength of the house. Once it is passed, the matter will go to the President of India. The President of India removes the judge consent. This is what is the procedure which is stated in the Constitution. This is where an issue of judicial accountability also comes in. Here, the excessive security which was given to judges, it is leading to misuse of office. And the process is so difficult that till date, no judge has been removed from the office. This tough process is supported on the argument of judicial independence, but it goes weak on the argument of judicial accountability. It means a common man cannot complain on an erring judge, and only the parliamentary member can do that. And also the removal process is quite complex in today's coalition politics. So that's why this existing mechanism is weakening it. So there was proposed judicial accountability bill to provide for other means to ensure the judicial accountability. So those are the points which we need to learn here. Rajendra Sachar passes away at 94. Whenever you remember Rajendra Sachar, you need to remember that Sachar Committee report. So this Sachar Committee report has become the basis for 15-point formula to provide welfare benefits to the minorities. Prosperity in the 21st century. What is the essence of this article? So though we have started the reforms in 1991, the real reduction of poverty and number of urban poor, it has only happened after 2004-2005. It means, though we started reforms in 91-92, reduction in poverty, especially the number of urban poor, it has started from 2004 to 2005, when there is remarkable growth in India. And here, the remarkable growth is more witnessed in agriculture, where agriculture saw around 4% growth. So what author tries to conclude is, whenever there is an agriculture growth, the number of urban poor has decreased. The reasons might be two over here. The agricultural growth, it has created demand for urban products or as manufacturing products in the rural markets. That led to income migration from rural to urban areas. Second, as the number of opportunities on the rural side have increased, it has reduced rural to urban migration. So these two reasons that have provided for greater reduction in poor rather than just the reforms. So it means reforms and urbanization alone did not lead to the reduction in poverty. It is actually the focus on agriculture that has reduced the poverty in the country. That is the message which he wants to drive over here. The third thing, checks against atrocities. So SCST, Prevention of Atrocities Act, is alleged to have diluted by the extra protection imposed by the Supreme Court against its misuse. Especially with regard to Section 18, it stated that the anticipatory bail or not giving an anticipatory bail is not a concrete rule. So now, anticipatory bails can be provided, and second thing is any FIR can be registered after a pre-inquiry in the case of the public authorities, and it has to be sufficiently a senior officer. In the case of the private individuals, a senior superintendent of police has to do a preliminary inquiry to file the FIR. So this article talks the basis of an empirical evidence. It goes like this. If you observe the number of frivolous complaints, these are only 10%. On the other hand, atrocities against Dalits, as for National Crime Records Bureau, it is increasing every year around 50 to 60%. And then there is very low conviction rate in the case of atrocities. So here, the more the statistical evidence is in favor of the suffering of Dalits. So obviously, the Supreme Court trying to give more support towards the liberties against the protection of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes may make them much vulnerable. So this fine balance between these two, protection of weaker sections and marginalized, and protection of the civil liberties, the fine balance shall be given as a responsibility to decide by the legislature rather than judiciary deciding it by itself. That's what this article essence is. And further remember one thing, Article 17 prohibits untouchability, and this Article 17 is an absolute right, and untouchability as a crime is prohibited by the Constitution, by the statutory provisions, and also by the executive rules. And also government has amended, that is Parliament has amended SC/ST Prohibition of Atrocities Act to increase more number of atrocities under the definition. And second, most of the times the convictions decrease because the accused say that they do not know the caste or tribal identity of the individual. Now this amendment has clearly stated that if an individual accused knows about the other person, it can be presumed that he also knows about his or her caste and tribal identity, and that cannot be questioned. So because of this, the law has become much tougher these days. So these are the provisions we need to remember here. Mission Impossible. It is about simultaneous elections. Prime Minister Modi has proposed for this, and the stated advantages are it reduces the election expenditure, logistical costs, and it also decreases the government to be on always on election mode. It means it increases the focus of the government on governance. On the other side, it is stated that it is not feasible constitutionally. Why is it not feasible? If you carefully observe, the no confidence motion keeps the governments in trouble, and it is essential for accountability of the executive towards the legislature. For this, what the Law Commission proposed is constructive motion of confidence. It means along with the no confidence motion is also introduced. It means if any no confidence motion has to be passed, the opposition has to show a viable alternative. The second thing Law Commission proposed is any government that loses support of the Lok Sabha, that is lower house in case of Union Parliament, or Legislative Assembly in the case of the states, and re-election was held, then the newly constituted house will have a tenure for the remaining of the 5 years period rather than getting a fresh lease of 5 years. Because of this, the continuity can be ensured. So these recommendations, if they have to be brought in, constitutional amendment is necessary for this. Across the spectrum, the political parties have to agree, which is almost a mission impossible in the existing circumstances. Conscience call. This article is about Rohingyas. So Rohingyas, these are Muslims living in Rakhine state in Myanmar, facing retribution. These are migrating across the seas to Bangladesh and they also have come to India. Around 40,000 people, Rohingyas, are expected to be living on Indian soil. Now, in this case, Bangladesh is facing a humanitarian crisis. So, it wants the Myanmar to take back its citizens, repatriation of the Rohingyas back to their place. But Myanmar even today do not identify them as its citizens. So in these circumstances, are the conditions safe in Myanmar to take back its citizens and to provide protection to Rohingyas? No. Unless there is pressure from the world, this situation is not expected to be resolved. That's what Bangladesh is stating. Withdraw hire and fire policy. You know that the Communist Party of India, Marxist, its meetings, annual meetings are going on in Hyderabad. So there are two issues raised. One is finance panel terms, that is terms of reference given to the Finance Commission. Already we have discussed enough onto this. So one is related to revenue deficit grants and the second is related to residual funds. It means the center wants Finance Commission to take into consideration its expenditure first and to recommend for the devolution only for the funds left over. It means the transfer of the funds, statutory transfers, the center is more seeing them as a discretionary grant rather than the right of the states. So this is what Mr. Karath has stated as anti-democratic. Withdraw the hire and fire policy. As of now, we have 44 labor laws, and the government proposed them to be converted into 4 labor codes. And it is amending the Apprentice Act, Factories Act, Contract Labor Act. So they fear that the existing amendments will give boost to hire and fire. It means greater flexibility in taking and sending the labor back home. And it is to promote a capitalistic kind of economy and to find greater space on this ease of doing business index. What will be the consequence of this? Contractualization and casualization of labor. Contract labor and casual labor increase in the place of the permanent workers with social security benefits. That is what is being stated over here. And this year a question is expected in the mains related to the labor laws amendments, hire and fire policy, social security to the workers. That is expected because of farmers, peasants and tribal movement. And also there is unrest in the industrial belt. So that question is expected this year. CEOs raise retrospective tax, mobility issues with prime ministers. It is about applying a tax from a back date. It is a nightmare for any businessman. So today a tax is created and it is applied from a back date and a tax is expected to be paid from a business person. Obviously it leads to controversy. So this retrospective taxation is also a reason for state investor disputes in India and decrease in investment flows. It creates tax terrorism. That's how the term was used by Arun Jaitley when he was in opposition. Mutual funds finds SME firms attractive. Across the world there is a trend. The large companies are facing heat. If you take in India, the big corporates are suffering from and banks are suffering from double balance sheet problem. So that's why the investors and mutual funds, everyone are looking to small, medium enterprises. So SMEs also can be listed in the stock exchanges today and they are getting a new sprout of capital movement into them because of their profitability. This is what you need to understand. And then the Bakarwals long walk. You know that these Bakarwals are nomadic tribes and in winters they come to Jammu region and in summers they go to Kashmir Valley. So these people, they are facing many of the problems because they do not have their rights identified under Forest Rights Act. The Forest Rights Act is not applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. You know that. Any parliamentary law do not automatically apply to Jammu and Kashmir, and the President of India has to pass a special presidential order to extend these laws to Jammu and Kashmir. So as this is not operational in Kashmir, obviously it is denying the rights to these forest dwellers who are nomadic tribes too. And this is about today's class. Today I did not make the note set. By evening I will give it to you. Thank you very much and all the best.